En la W, una noticia.
La noticia tiene que ver con los vaqueros de la cocaína, de Cocaine Cowboys. Ayer recordábamos la entrevista con el realizador de la película, donde la protagonista era doña Griselda Blanco, la reina de la coca. Pues la historia tiene que ver con el arresto de Gustavo Falcón, el último de esos vaqueros. Falcón era hermano de Willy, fue arrestado en Orlando, pudo huir 26 años. Gustavo hoy tiene 55, había escapado de un encauzamiento en Miami, donde se le acababa de acusar de entrar toneladas de cocaína. Es una leyenda de cuántas toneladas logró ingresar este hombre. Nos atiende desde la oficina de Alguaciles Federales Barry Golden. Officer Golden, good morning. Officer Golden? Officer Golden, good morning.
Good morning.
Mariana, ¿cuántas toneladas desde Colombia lograron introducir en los Estados Unidos los hermanos Falcón?
Officer, how many tons of cocaine were the Falcon brothers able to smuggle into the U.S. that came from Colombia?
Well, that question would probably be better off answered by someone from the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. But just from the reports I've read in the media, according to the indictment and so forth, it's alleged 75 tons, supposedly.
Julio, de lo que él entiende de los reportes y documentos de la corte, son alrededor de 75 toneladas.
Ellos lograron quedar absueltos hace 26 años y se dice que lo que hicieron fue comprar y sobornar a los testigos en un jurado en los Estados Unidos. ¿Pasó algo con ese testigo o testigos sobornados del jurado?
Officer, it's believed that the reason for why they were acquitted in that first trial is because they bribed some of the witnesses, for example. Do we know anything about what happened to those bribed witnesses?
I mean, unfortunately, I can't really speak to the former case. And I apologize that I can't, expand on this. But that would be probably a question more for the U.S. Attorney's Office, because the U.S. Marshal Service was not involved in the investigation of the alleged bribery of witnesses or the first trial or, the cocaine importation indictment of Mr. Willie Falcón and Sal Magluta. The Marshal Service is responsible for tracking down fugitives, and this is the arrest of Gustavo Falcón last Wednesday was our involvement because he was a fugitive, and he was a fugitive for 26 years.
Julio, él en verdad no puede hablar mucho del caso en específico porque en verdad el que podría, darnos la respuesta a esa pregunta es la oficina del fiscal general. Lo que hacen los U.S. Marshals es simplemente encontrar al fugitivo. Ellos no están involucrados en la investigación y en lo que se presenta en cuanto al caso, sino en encontrar al fugitivo, que en este caso era el señor Gustavo Falcón.
Listo, entonces esa es la última pregunta. ¿Cómo encontraron después de 26 años al señor Falcón en Kissimmee?
So, officer, since that is your job to find this fugitive, how did you finally find Gustavo Falcón after 26 years of evading justice?
Well, deputy marshals who work fugitive cases are some of the best investigators in the world, and we know how to find people. That's our specialty. We know how to find people who don't want to be found. And we never stopped looking, and I say we, deputy marshals who are assigned to that case, never stopped looking for him, even though we believe that he was living abroad, that he was living in another country, Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, because he was on the run. It was somewhat surprising that he was right here 300 miles away from Miami, the city where he grew up and where he initially became a fugitive and took off from. But the deputy marshals figured out that he was using a fake name. Approximately a month and a half ago, we developed information he was using a false name on a driver's license with an address in Hialeah, Florida.
Bueno, Julio, nos dice el oficial que, bueno, en un principio pensaron que Gustavo Falcón estaba por fuera del país, en Cuba, en México o hasta en Colombia, pero que igual nunca dejaron de buscarlo durante estos 26 años. Y hace un poco más de un mes se dieron cuenta que había un nombre falso asignado a unas placas de un vehículo que en verdad no era el nombre de él, que se decía en los papeles del vehículo, sino que era el Gustavo Falcón, el verdadero dueño de ese vehículo, y fue a través de ese vehículo que lo encontraron. Estaba en Hialeah, ahí en la Florida.
Justo quería que nos contara qué sintieron al descubrir que no estaba fuera del país, que siempre estuvo en el estado de la Florida y que además era como un vecino más. Verlo montar bicicleta con su esposa, verlo atender actividades tradicionales con sus 2 hijos mayores. ¿Qué sintieron? Además, ¿qué dijo él en el momento del arresto? Porque entiendo que no opuso resistencia, que fue fácil, pues, el evento como tal ya cuando lo ubicaron finalmente y descubrieron que sí era él.
Officer, so can you tell us more about what the U.S. Marshals felt at the moment in which they discovered that Gustavo Falcón was not abroad? He was actually living in Florida, very close to you. He was riding a bicycle, for example, like any other citizen. And we would also like to know what happened in that moment when you arrested him, which we understand he didn't resist much. So tell us about that moment, about your discovery and his arrest.
Well, it was very surprising when the deputy marshals who were working this case developed the information that he was believed to be in Kissimmee. Even though he put a fake address on his driver's license, the investigation determined that he was living in the Kissimmee, Florida area. And in 2013, he got into a car accident in the Kissimmee, Florida area. So that actually told us that we were only a couple of years behind him and that he was still using this same fake name. And not only he was using the fake name, his wife was also using a fake name with the same last fake name. And so our efforts started focusing on the Kissimmee area, and just in the last couple of weeks, we developed an address which turned out to be a rental property in Kissimmee. And that's the typical MO on someone who is a fugitive. They're not going to have a house in their name, cars in their name, and so forth. So we started focusing on that property, and last Wednesday, a team of U.S. Marshals from Miami met some U.S. Marshals from Central Florida, and they converged on that house just to conduct surveillance. And early in the morning, Mr. Falcón was seen coming out of the garage with his wife on a bike. It initially made things kind of difficult to positively identify him because they were wearing bicycle helmets, the safety helmets, and sunglasses. So they followed him for several hours just to make sure that he was the fugitive that they were looking for, because they didn't want to take somebody down in the street or arrest somebody who was not the person they were that was wanted. And so they wanted to make absolutely 100% sure that this was in fact the subject who has been on the run for 26 years. So they followed him, and once they were confirmed, and once they were absolutely sure this was Gustavo Falcón, they took him down at an intersection, and they basically blocked him in with their vehicles and got out of the vehicle and instructed him to get on the ground. He was placed in handcuffs. He did not resist, and he was handcuffed, and then he was allowed to sit down for a few minutes until they contacted other local police to transport him to back to the U.S. Marshal's office, and then ultimately to the Orange County Jail.
So, Carla, le digo que ellos estuvieron muy sorprendidos en el momento en el que se enteraron que él estaba en la Florida. Se dieron cuenta, además, que él había estado en un accidente, había sufrido un accidente de tránsito en el 2013, y a raíz de eso fue que se dieron cuenta del vínculo que tenía con el nombre falso y el apellido falso que utilizaban tanto él como su esposa. Además se dieron cuenta que estaban arrendando una casa, y eso era una digamos pista, porque los fugitivos nunca compran las cosas, siempre tienen que arrendar las cosas y bajo un nombre ficticio. Una vez encontraron la dirección de esa casa arrendado en el área de Kissimmee, los alguaciles fueron a su casa junto con otros alguaciles de otra área, y los vieron salir del garaje con su esposa en la bicicleta. Era difícil determinar la identidad de las personas directamente porque tenían cascos para montar en bicicleta y tenían gafas, entonces los persiguieron durante un largo rato, y solamente cuando estuvieron seguros de que era Gustavo Falcón y su esposa fue cuando los interceptaron cuando hicieron una parada y lo arrestaron en el piso, pero lo dejaron permanecer sentado un rato mientras llegaba la patrulla que se lo llevaría eventualmente a la prisión del condado Orange.
Mariana, escuchamos esta historia y pareciera que fuera una película, pero a mí no deja de llamarme la atención ver un presidente como Donald Trump persiguiendo indocumentados que se han comido quizás una luz, que han dejado de pagar un ticket de tránsito y siendo perseguidos como delincuentes, y por otro lado ver este señor que estuvo 26 años viviendo y disfrutando de una vida en Estados Unidos completamente libre. Entonces, ¿dónde está el enfoque de las autoridades de Estados Unidos? Es una pregunta que quizás el alguacil pueda responder retóricamente.
Sheriff, maybe you as a law enforcement authority can tell us where the focus of an organization such as yours is, because we see President Trump giving a lot of talk about finding illegal immigrants, and it seems like a lot of law enforcement resources are being put towards that purpose. But a fugitive like this was able to hide for around 26 years. So in your opinion, where is the focus actually going, and is it being effective in terms of how it impacts society as a whole?
Well, the U.S. Marshal Service is tasked with investigating and locating and arresting federal fugitives, and part of our task forces nationwide, state and local fugitives as well. And so even though we don't look at whether a person is illegally here or he is a resident alien or he is a U.S. citizen, our focus remains the same. When there is an arrest warrant issued for a person who is a fugitive, we're going to use all the resources that we have at our disposal to track that fugitive down and bring him back to justice. Whether they're an illegal alien, a resident alien, is not of much consequence to us at that point in time. If a subject is arrested and we find out that he was deported and now he has re-entered the United States, of course, that's when we would contact the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, authorities, and have them prosecute that individual for a re-entry after deportation federal charge. But, I think Donald Trump has been very supportive of law enforcement in the United States So, but we will maintain and continue our mission in this regard.
Ivonne, el alguacil nos deja muy claro que su organización simplemente busca a fugitivos. El hecho de que sean indocumentados o ciudadanos americanos o residentes legales de ese país no tiene nada que ver. Si es un fugitivo, ellos lo buscan. Si tiene una orden de arresto y tiene que ser encontrado, ellos se dedican a buscarlo. Ahora, si por ejemplo una persona ha sido deportada y ha logrado volver a entrar a los Estados Unidos, pues ellos simplemente contactan al famoso ICE, a aquella agencia que vigila y conduce todos los temas de inmigración para que ellos lleven a cabo el debido proceso.
Bueno, él dice que ellos son los mejores del mundo en encontrar fugitivos. ¿Cuánto tiempo calcula él que va a caer el asesino de Ohio, el que acaba de subir a internet el asesinato de su víctima, de un señor mayor?
You, the sheriff, say that the U.S. Marshals are the best in the world at finding fugitives. We'd like to know how much time you calculate it will take to find the Ohio murderer that just posted that live murder on Facebook and is now running loose.
You can never, from the law enforcement standpoint, you can never put a time frame on how long it will take to catch a fugitive. It's just something, it's very, very hard to say, you can't say we'll have this guy in custody in X number of days. It's very hard to determine that. We will work very hard. The U.S. Marshals, I believe from what I have read, are involved in the fugitive case of that individual who is now a fugitive. And they will work very diligently to track that individual down and hopefully arrest him and bring him back to justice to face the charges that he is facing in Ohio. But it's very hard, only because when you have an individual who is on the run and doing everything that he can do to avoid capture and to remain, under the radar of law enforcement, it's hard to put a number of days or weeks that it would take. I don't know any law enforcement officer who would try to predict, they would have a fugitive in custody in X number of days or weeks.
Julio, él no se atreve a ponerle un número, a estimar cuánto tiempo le calcula a la captura de ese individuo. Es más, nos dice que no conoce a ningún alguacil que lo haría, porque son situaciones que dependen de distintas variables. Qué tan listo es el personaje, el fugitivo, es una de esas variables. Entonces, él dice que no le calcula un tiempo, pero que sí están trabajando muy duro para encontrarlo.
Officer Golden, thank you very much for your time and have you a good morning.
Thank you very much. And just for the record, my official title is Senior Inspector with the U.S. Marshals, or I'm the Public Information Officer. Either one is fine.
Okay, Senior Inspector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Que él es Senior Inspector, no es Officer. Mariana, por favor.
Inspector de los más altos mandos, Senior. Exactamente.
Senior, exactamente. Ya regresamos, esta es la W, la caída del último de los jinetes de la cocaína. Ya regresamos.